So a lot of these innovations are happening, and it can only get better from here because a lot of private money, a lot of foreign money is flowing into agriculture, and this has caught the eye of the VCs, and a huge amount of funding has gone into the agri-tech segment, and you will see a huge boom for the next 4-5 years in this particular segment.
India's diverse economy encompasses traditional village farming, modern agriculture, handicrafts, a wide range of modern industries, and a multitude of services. Slightly less than half of the workforce is in agriculture. Hello and welcome to the Honest Talk by Freak Folks. I'm Harsh Pandey. For this particular session, our guest will be Mr. Nitin Jain, sir. He's a co-founder and CEO of O'AgriFarm. So first of all, sir, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and actually agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harsh. Thank you so much for inviting me, and yeah, very happy to speak to you about a variety of topics.
Thank you, sir. It's our pleasure too. So, moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen, is why agriculture is India's silver lining. Global lockdown due to pandemic forced factories, shops, and other venues of production to shut down. Hence, India's exports dried up. Even in such a scenario, agriculture exports grew up by an incredibly 43.4% in April-September 2020. The agriculture sector contributes almost 15% to India's $2.7 trillion economy, and this is only expected to grow. So, my very first request to you is to please explain our viewers in more detail how actually India's this agriculture sector is India's silver lining.
Yeah, so agriculture sector, obviously, India has been an agricultural agrarian economy, as they call it, since forever. And agriculture has been the bread and butter for about 40% of our population, and maybe even more. So
Yes.
agriculture. All the governments, all including the private players, they've realized very recently that yes, agriculture needs to be given its due respect. Earlier, what was happening because of the revolutionizing or because of liberation of the economy, they were not really focused on agriculture as much as they were focused on industrialization. So
Right.
now, until recently, they've realized that agriculture has to be given its due respect because a lot of value addition and a lot of GDP concentration is in agriculture, and a lot of value can be derived out of agriculture. And so that is why you would have seen in the last 2-3 years a lot of agri-tech startups have come up only because of this reason. So like fintech was a huge buzzword in and around the 2015-16. E-commerce was a huge buzzword in and around the 10 to 15 region. Now what has happened since 2018 2019, agri-tech is the new buzzword, and it's a good thing because people are focusing on agriculture. And earlier it was we were only hearing about farmer suicides and problems in the agriculture sector, but now people have actually started doing something to solve the problems in the agriculture sector, whether it's a use of technology, whether it's reducing the perishability, reducing the wastage. So a lot of these innovations are happening, and it can only get better from here because a lot of private money, a lot of foreign money is flowing into agriculture, and this has caught the eye of the VCs, and a huge amount of funding has gone into the agri-tech segment, and you will see a huge boom for the next 4-5 years in this particular segment.
This is really great, and I'm sure actually the people those who are watching this session they must find this interesting as well. And so my next question to you is actually, in spite of all the technological advances, there is still a confidence gap among food growers. We are who are simply not used to buying, deploying, and using these technologies as part of their day job. What's more, the array of tools and platform at their disposal can be overwhelming and even daunting for food growers who rely on methodologies that have worked well for decades. So, how do you see this all?
Yeah, so every process, is a slow and steady process. So nothing can be just flipped over overnight. So no technology can just become an overnight success. What happens is that you start in a small part, gain confidence over there, make sure you make them realize that the yield is there, and so on and so forth. So once that happens, other people also start picking up that particular technology and they start using it, and then it starts to go viral. It's with everything, right? So e-commerce, when it started, it was slow and steady to begin with, right? So then Amazon and Flipkart, they had a huge following where people only wanted to order from these two platforms. Similarly, fintechs with the payments, Paytm was revolutionary. Then came Phone Pay and so on, Google Pay and so on and so forth. So there has to be a start, and I think that start has taken place. It's a slow and steady adoption to technology. It's not something that which happens overnight. It doesn't happen this way.
I
So
think
you will see in the next 2-3 years this trend taking place where a lot of farmers, because they want to increase the yield, they want to reduce the wastage. They will see a lot of these innovations. A lot of these innovations will come into play in the farming segment, in the agri segment.
sure. I'm actually very much confident about it. And sir, my next question to you is actually we are talking about making India 5 trillion and $10 trillion economy. So what do you think? What will be the role of agriculture sector? How much will it going to contribute?
Yeah, see, one of the reasons why India doesn't have parity in a few places is because one, we're not able to control the yield, right? So our yield is much lower than let's say in the US. If they're growing tomatoes, our yield is 1/10 over here in India. So one thing that is certain is that those technologies from the US, etc., need to be imported into India, and India needs to start adopting those technologies so that our yield goes up, and then the prices actually come down, and then we start exporting all those fruits and vegetables, or even grains and so on and so forth. So that definitely needs to happen for India to really reach that $5 trillion mark. So India's farming segment needs to be a bit more welcoming to all these new technology, because historically, the farmer, all he cares about, he owns about 2 or 3 acres. Per acre produces about 4 or 5 tons. So he just cares about his food at the end of the day. But if someone can actually show him that uh, uh, yes, there is money to be made here, there is a yield increase that can happen. Someone needs to instill that confidence in the farmer, and then you will see a huge amount of boom that will happen, and then automatically we will tend towards the 5 or the $10 trillion mark.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
so without agriculture being there, it'll be very difficult to hit that $5 trillion mark easily.
I indeed, no, I'm very much confident about it. This also answer my next question to you is we all have actually I was reading one report and found that experts estimate that the world's population could be too big to feed by 2050 if global food system are not transformed. What's more, in countries like the US, where 37% of the total water use is destined for agriculture, groundwater is being pumped faster than it can be replenished. Building confidence in farmer and food growers to embrace these technologies to optimize resources, reduce waste, mitigate pest, and ultimately increase productivity will be essential to the future of food. But sir, my question to you is, as you are already into this field, you have built your successfully your startup. So, what are the kind of challenges you face when you actually try to communicate your ideas with them? So, what are the challenges in your
See,
way?
right now we're not dealing directly with the farmers, so we are creating a demand backward ecosystem where we generate the demand and then we then search for the supplies. Right? Many other people are there, supply forward. So we have taken a different viewpoint. We say that if we have enough and more demand, then it'll be easier for us to convince the farmers to actually start working with us. Otherwise, what happens is that if you go to the farmer and say that yes, I will be able to sell your produce, and if you're not able to sell it, then you get stuck. So first, we want to generate the demand and then go backwards to the farmers. It become much easier. So in the next 2 years, you'll see us, going to the farmers with a much better proposition than what we can currently offer. Because as soon as you have a demand of, let's say, even a lakh ton of wheat, then convincing a lot of farmers to come and work with you is much easier than if you don't have any demand at the moment and you're just searching for demand. So first, we want to get the demand out there. So that's how we are thinking about it. Yeah,
Okay,
we
and
are happy to wait a couple of years for that.
this is really great, and I'm very much hopeful about it. I'm very much actually optimistic. And so my next question to you is: we also need to actually understand the big opportunity for India lies in creating a competent and trained manpower. Of particular concern that has been the skilling of the rural youth, who constitute nearly 68% of the country's total population. So, what are the recommendations you have to foster skilling and reskilling in rural India?
Uh, yeah, so I think there's a huge gap in terms of literacy, and that actually, propagates into technology adoption. So I think that's extremely important. I think there has to be steps taken. There have to be steps taken by both the private as well as the public or the government to actually increase this literacy so that more technology adoption can take place. So this, I believe, is possible with a public private partnership of some form. It cannot just be the government driving it, cannot just be the private players driving it. It has to be a combination of some sort, where as part of CSR activities or as part of a proper capitalistic activity, you actually start setting up these centers, because ultimately, the return on investment may be 5 years delayed, but it will definitely happen. So I think it has to be a combined effort from both angles. It just cannot be just the government doing it or just the private players doing it. ITC tried doing it, but without government support, it becomes very difficult. And
Mhm.
government tried doing it, but without the private intervention, the private guys actually come in and they force results. That's very important. That push is required. A government can only implement to a certain extent. So that's why I believe that private public partnership is important in this particular area.
Indeed, sir. And there's a one more actually concept I want you to please actually means address this. About 87% of the household in tribal village and 45% in the non-tribal villages relied on migration. Even female members migrated in a significant proportion
Yeah,
of household.
yeah,
67% in tribal village and 31% in the non-tribal village. So how do you say this?
yeah. Yeah, so I think the reverse migration is taking place at the moment. What is happening is that so right now migration is it's like similar to how brain drain was taking place in the 90s and the 2000s, and then now reverse brain drain is taking place, right, where people or entrepreneurs are actually coming back to India to support the Indian startup ecosystem. Similarly, in farming, we are seeing that happening. Right, earlier what used to happen is that in the rural areas, people used to die to come to the cities like Bombay and
Yes.
Delhi and so on and so forth. But now what is happening is that people are dying to go back to the farming segment because they see a huge opportunity. So you would see people coming back from the US, setting up these many acres of farms and so on and so forth. That reverse migration is taking place slightly, and that has to be from the and the educated class is doing it, right? Not the so educated class is taking the lead in doing this. So wherever the educated class takes the lead and sets up the infrastructure, the illiterate or not so educated class will actually follow suit, because they will see a huge opportunity in and around that area.
Right.
So you will definitely see this happening in the next 4 5 years. I'm very hopeful that this reverse migration will take place from the urban to the rural areas. As soon as you would start adopting technology, new ways of farming, new ways of increasing yield, all this will happen. This is bound to happen.
Indeed, sir. And sir, as you have mentioned in your first answer, that this is the golden time for the agri-tech startups. So my
Yes.
question to you is, how do you see the future hold for jobs in this domain? How will it going to create?
I have seen people from corporates who worked in McKinsey and other large corporates such as Tata and so on and so forth reach out to me saying that yeah, they're interested in the agri vertical, where they have to deal with farmers and so on and so forth. I've never ever had that previous experience. So this is a huge change that we are seeing, huge massive change that we are seeing.
This
Yeah.
is really great. And sir, my next question to you is actually it's a kind of a request to you, sir. Please explain to our viewers about your own venture, and I would love to hear from you. And also, if they want to connect with you, then how can they reach to you?
Yeah, so very happy to connect with me on LinkedIn. So you can just easily find me on LinkedIn. My name is Nitin Jain. So you just type in Nitin Jain O'AgriFarm, and then you will reach out to me. So this is, so I co-founded Off Business in 2015. So during COVID, I started the agri venture because, during COVID, we had a lot of time to think about new and we keep innovating. So agri at that point of time, needed a needed someone to get in and identify the opportunities. So I'm someone who always looks for new opportunities, and I'm good at scaling up things. So I'm great at 0 to 1. So we began in looking at opportunities, and we saw opportunities in the wheat sector, in the maize sector, and in the dry fruit sector. So we said that let's take care of the opportunity. Let's fill in the working capital gap. Let's fill in the supply chain aggregation gap because it's highly fragmented. Let's try and defragment this particular value chain a little bit. And so we started off with the domestic segment. Now we're doing a decent amount of exports as well. right? So we started off with zero exports, but in December we did about 40-50 crores of exports. This month we will plan to touch about 100-125 crores of exports. So
Great.
yeah, so we are definitely trying to capture the supply chain, defragment the supply chain, bring about a lot of aggregation opportunities over there, and also acquire a lot of manufacturing assets. So we want to basically, the supply chain from front to the back. So that's essentially what we're trying to do at OAgriFarm.
This is really great, and I want to tell my viewers that they can find the link of the profile. They may directly in the description of this video, so
Yeah.
they can directly reach from there. And sir, my next question to you is: what are some tips would you like to give to those people who want to build or actually enter into this domain of agri-tech?
See, it need not only be about agri-tech, right? So someone who needs to start something of their own, they need to have a lot of passion towards that particular field, whether it be e-commerce, whether it be B2B, whether it be agri. So they need to demonstrate a lot of passion and zeal and persistence, right? So without persistence, nothing can happen. So if you're not persistent enough, so you may fail in the beginning, but if you're not persistent enough, and persistence doesn't mean 1 year persistence, 2 year persistence, right? It means 5 to 10 years of continuous struggle and persistence, and then only you'll be able to see results. So if you expect results overnight, that's not something that happens, right? So you need to stick to your conviction, and then obviously iterate as well as you go, because you keep learning new things. No one is born with everything known. So that's how you take it forward. Yeah.
Indeed, sir. This was really a very valuable piece of advice, and I'm sure the people those who are watching this session they must have understood. And sir, I can say there's a lot more to learn from you, but today I don't want to take too much of your time. So moving to my last question of this session, again, I just
Sure.
want to ask, what are the some tips or advices would you like to suggest to rural youth, because now they are very much connected with the internet, and now the things.
Upskill yourself, get in tune with the latest technologies, and yeah, I mean, just make sure that whatever you do, it's productive in nature. Do not rely on old way of doing things, because world has moved, and the rural areas also need to move in accordance with the world, otherwise they'll be left far behind. They should now, given that smartphones are everywhere, YouTube is everywhere, they should go on to YouTube and look for new ways of how to build up new crops, or what are the new ways of farming. So they should be researching a lot about that, and that's the only way they can uplift their economy and their rural economy.
Indeed, sir. Again, this is a very valuable piece of advice, and I must say the kind of energy you got into this session was inspiring for me as well, and the people those who are
Thank
watching
you.
this session they will also going to enjoy. And thank you so much, sir, for
Thank
joining
you.
and giving your important time. It was a kind of a
Thank
healthy
you.
conversation.
Thank you, Ash.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you, Ash. All right, bye.
Bye, sir.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside, I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside, I'm alone.